Greetings everyone, welcome to Just Advanced, and this is a game from 1959 and this is a game played between legends, and this is one special because this is a game played between Mikhail and Robert James Fischer. I mean, Tal was at his prime and this was a game held in Yugoslavia. Tal was definitely at his prime. I mean, he crushed everyone in 1959 candidates and he was ahead of everyone 2 points, and Robert James Fischer was just 16 to 20. He was an absolutely legend prodigy and definitely crushing everyone. So this one's definitely going to be an epic match, so I'm not going to keep you waiting for long. So without further ado, let's start with this game. Fischer is with the white pieces and he starts with e4, and Tal is definitely ready for a fight, so he goes for c5, and we have knight to f3 but just this d6, and we have d4 but c captures, knight captures, and going for this knight to f6, just attacking that e4 pawn, and we have knight to c3 defending but just this a6, going for the knight off variation. And you definitely know that it's going to be an amazing match when you have that knight off on the board. And we have bishop to c4 but just going for that e6, going for that main line, and we have bishop to b3 but just this bishop to e7. And now you could choose to go for this amazing line with this g4, and only after black castles now you go for this bishop to e3, not actually going for that queen to d2 and castles line, but instead after black plays the knight up to d7, now you go for this spectacular bishop caps on e6. F captures, now you go for this knight captures, poking both the queen and the rook. So only after the queen moves, now you go for this knight captures, bishop captures, and now after f3, just cementing that structure. Now after knight to c6, black has to develop. He is behind in development. So here now you go for this queen to d5 check. Now definitely just trading queens because you don't want to have that queen on the board while your king is still in the center. So here after queen captures, knight captures, now you can see that black is very much behind in development, and white will simply castle and have an easy game. And even against Tal, it's definitely could be very much winning. But Fischer knows that he cannot go that aggressive against Tal, and Tal would definitely crush him if he goes for that g4 move. So instead, Fischer goes for this f4, and that is very much principled idea. You want to get that bishop developed and go for this queen to d2 and castle and get the rooks into the game. And definitely when the rooks get a hold of those files, you want to push those pawns and have an immense attack. But here just castles by Tal not bothered, and we have queen to f3 but just queen to c7. And here definitely Fischer takes Tal out of his preparation because Fischer makes a move that is definitely not common. Fischer not going for that bishop move and castling queenside. Instead, he goes for castles kingside. And definitely it's a bit scary because you have opened up that f file, and against Tal, that's definitely something you don't want to do. And Tal immediately jumps into action. He goes for this b5. And here we have f5, trying to stir up some trouble on the king side, but just this b4. And now you're going to have to push that knight away. So here knight to a4, but just this e5, attacking the other knight, and we have knight to e2, but just this bishop to b7. And now you can see that there's immense pressure on that pawn, and you're gonna have to defend it. So just knight to g3 defending, but just we have this knight bd7. And now you can see that Fischer going for this line. You can see that all of Tal's pieces are developed. He just has to get the rooks into the game, and he's gonna have an easy game. And that's definitely something you don't want to do. Give Tal an amazing position right from the opening. And here just bishop to e3 was played, but just this bishop to c6. And now after bishop to f2, this bishop to f2, again a very slow move. Instead, what you could have played was you could have gone for this c4 right away. And even if you go for this en passant, you can just capture with the knight and get the knight into the game. Rook a c8 could have been played, and after rook a e1, you go for this queen to a5, just targeting that piece. So you're going to have to defend, and you're going to have to defend it with the queen. That's the only way. So here queen to d1, but just this rook f to d8. And now after bishop to f2, now going for that move, but just this rook to c7, just doubling up on the c file. And after h3, by going for a passive move, you can play this rook d to c8, and only after this bishop to e3, just stopping that defense of that e4 pawn. And now that e4 pawn is definitely up for grabs, but if you want to capture it or not, that's up to you, because here after knight captures on e4, you can go for this knight captures, that bishop captures, and you could go for this spectacular f6. And now you could definitely capture that pawn with the knight, but even if you capture that pawn with the knight, you can see that that bishop will eventually become pawn, so you don't want to do that. So here after bishop captures, now you go for this queen captures on d6. You're going to have to give back some material to just keep your advantage. So here bishop to c6, just getting that bishop back. You don't want to get that bishop under the crosshair of that rook. So here after queen back to d1, you have to defend that knight again. You get this position where definitely Tal is up in the position. He has all his pieces targeting the right pieces. He just has to find the right continuation, and he'll have an amazing game. But that was the best that Fischer had in this position. Instead, he went for this bishop back to f2, kind of a passive move, but you're gonna have to do what you have to do. So here after queen to b7, now going for that e4 pawn, but here just rook f e1 defending, and we have this finally breakthrough in the center and a Sicilian player's dream, going for that d5. And now after e captures, you go for this knight captures, but now not trading everything, but instead you have to go for this knight e4. Now you don't want your queen to be in the crosshair of this amazing lineup, so here just knight to f4. I mean, just look at this knight. This knight is an absolute monster. You cannot even push it with this g3, because then you get this knight to h3, and now you're going to lose that amazing defender of your position. And if you lose that bishop and Tal has a dark squared bishop, then you know what's going to happen. So here finally going for that c4, but it's a little bit too late, as Tal goes for an absolute engine precision and plays the perfect move. He goes for this g6, and this g6 is such a spectacular move, and it might not seem like it, because what are you going to do in this position? If you just leave that pawn hanging and you don't do anything, this pair is just too strong. I mean, if that capture comes, you're going to lose that knight. So here Fischer thought the only thing he could do is capture it, but there's just one move that can save the game, which is this f6. And here after knight captures, you're going to play this knight to c5, and after bishop captures, you cannot grab that bishop, but instead you want to grab that knight with a check. So here after knight captures, you go for this king to g7, and after knight to d5, now you go, and after bishop captures on f2, queen captures, but after this bishop captures, c captures, and after knight to d3, just going for that fork and winning that exchange. So here after queen to e3, just knight captures, but first this queen caps on e5, a swish and soup, and only after the king moves, now you go for this queen caps on e1. So yes, Tal would be up the exchange, but you'll have this passed pawn, so maybe you can do something with that, but that's the best that Fischer had in this position. Instead, what followed is absolutely brutal, because we get this f captures on g6, and now Tal not even willing to just capture that, instead not even going for the pawns, but instead he goes for it. He goes for this spectacular f5, and now you cannot move that knight, but there's just one move. Instead he goes for this g7. Now first going for that swish and soak and asking Tal what you're going to do with that g7 move. Are you going to move the rook? But instead Tal goes for this king caps on g7, and now Fischer gets the queen out of the crosshair with this queen to g3 check, and after king to h8, just this knight to e5, just moving that knight out of the way. And now there's immense pressure along this time and capture that pawn, but first your queen is under attack, and you have to be careful about that as well. So here just knight caps on e5, and after bishop captures, and after knight captures, we have queen to c7, just getting that queen out of harm's way, and we have queen to e3. And this queen to e3 move further makes Fischer's position just completely worse, because we have this rook a to e8, and now after rook to e2, we have this knight captures, queen captures, but just now this position is absolutely crumbling. But there's just one move that finishes this game on the spot, so I'm going to ask you to pause the video and try to find this spectacular move which ends the game on the spot while I give you a couple of seconds. So congratulations to everyone who's able to find this move, and the move is the spectacular bishop caps on g2. Yes, that's right, sacrificing an entire bishop, because that bishop cannot be captured. If you capture that bishop with the queen, then just rook comes in and you lose your queen. And instead, if you choose to go it the other way around, if you capture it with the king, then you get this queen to c6 check. Only after the rook moves, now you get this rook to g8 and infiltrate, and now the queen is going to infiltrate as well while the rook is covering this file. I mean, it's just an impossible position to even defend or even play. To stop that, so here queen to f2, but just this queen to h1, and now you're losing the rook. And after king to e2, queen caps on a1, and you've just lost the rook, and you've just lost the game as well. So instead, Fischer decided to not go with either of the options. Instead, Fischer goes for this knight caps on a6, but now you get this amazing queen to a7, just nicely connecting with that knight. So here just king caps on g2 was played, but now not even grabbing that knight, but instead going for the kill with this rook to g8. And after king to h3, now not going for this rook to e6, because you could go for that and that would actually be winning, but here definitely Tal just trolling his opponents. He goes for this queen to g7 by going for that amazing checkmate with the queen. So here just this bishop to d1 was played, trying to defend against that, but now finally going for this rook to e6. And so just on move 33 that proper James Fischer resigned the game, and Tal got his spectacular victory in Yugoslavia, and definitely played an insane game against Fischer, and definitely deserved this game. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I'll be coming up with another amazing game. I'll definitely a ferocious tactic game like this, so stay tuned for that, and I'll be seeing you guys very soon. Thank you all.